Well, I was hopeful for this old 6.9 IDI, but she let me down. Let's figure out what went wrong. Well, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. Look what the cat drug in. Quite literally, look at what the cat drug in, because I had to borrow the skid steer to move this thing around, because if you are ever curious about what the lifting capacity of the service binder is, you're looking at it. Well, that's kind of a lie. The service binder could lift this thing, but it couldn't lift and drive at the same time because lifting this up took so much weight off the front end of the truck that you couldn't steer it. So I could either tow this thing or I could lift it. I couldn't do both, which was a pain in the butt. But anyways, that was a whole debacle. None of it's on camera, but all of that's behind us now. We got the old Travelette in the shop. If you guys remember, this is my 1970 International 1200 Travelette, of course. Travelette being a crew cab. Travelette is the international little term for crew cab. And this thing's awesome. If you guys recall, the plan and what I'd been working on is this right here. We got a 6.9 liter IDI going into this thing. It's going to be a 6.9 4-speed truck, keeping the divorce transfer case and everything behind it. This is a super cool project that I'm really excited about. But I kind of, this thing kind of got pushed to the sidelines this summer, especially for Jeeps happening. We got the M38 project here. And, well, like I said, this thing kind of got forgotten over the summer. And I felt really bad because, well, I hadn't touched it in a year. And it also occurred to me that this truck hasn't moved an inch since the day I bought it from the spot it was sitting in. And, well, I felt kind of bad about that. So I decided to up and tow this thing down to the shop and get it thrown in here. The big thing that I want to do, I want to hear this IDI run on diesel before the new year so that this truck, got some work done on it before 2025, because I literally haven't touched it since the fall of 2023. So, that's going to be the plan here today. But first things first, this bumper has to go. It's actually a fairly well-built plow bumper if I was going to have a plow on this truck. It's not very visually appealing, but it is built well and heavy. But one thing about it, this bar being so high up, the engine has to come up to this level to get it up and over and out of the truck, which is a pain in the butt. And I have other plans for a bumper on this truck, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll cut this thing off of here so that we can get the engine out a lot easier, and obviously that'll get this thing out of the way. The other thing is this bumper has these crossbars that go up to the frame that you can see. They start right there and go up to the frame back here. And where they're welded on, they're actually welded to this cross member here. This cross member has to go. So yeah, we're gonna get two birds stoned with the same joint. We'll get this bumper off, we'll get that cross member out, we'll get that engine out. I guess that's 3 birds. And then once that engine's sitting on the floor, we can get it all rigged up to try and start it on the floor. So I'm gonna get to it here, and I'll keep you guys updated. Alrighty, that only took way longer than it should have. I didn't realize that they ran 3 bolts through the square tubing here. So this bumper was bolted and welded on via the square tubing, as well as those 2 support brackets underneath for the whole plow mount system. So whoever did this, I don't know whether to say good job or try and, take a swing at them, because this thing was on there. They definitely made up for their crappy welds by sticking bolts in there. Goodness me. All right, well, I'm going to have to clean all this up later on, but for right now, let's just go ahead and get the 6.9 out of here and set this thing on the floor and, try and do something with that. One thing that I haven't mentioned in a little while is the fact that one of the reasons why I'm really excited about this project is because this, of course, is an International Harvester engine that came out in Ford pickups. Good old IH. And this truck, of course, is an International Harvester. And one of the things that I always thought was kind of wild to think about is that International Harvester stopped making these light-duty pickups, half-ton, three-quarter, and one-ton pickups. They quit making them in 1975. And it was this body style of truck that they were making at the very last in 1975. Of course, International kept making medium-duty and heavy-duty trucks, but they stopped making light-duty pickups in 1975. And of course, Ford came out with the 6.9 IDI, which, like I said, is an International Harvester engine in 1983. So had International held out for 8 more years, I think they could have had one of the coolest trucks ever made, being 1980s light-duty International Harvesters with the IDI in it. I think it would have been a great combo could they have held out. But another thing, though, is had Ford not used these engines, I probably wouldn't be such a diehard Ford guy. So it's kind of one of those situations where what happened, and, well, I'm trying to, kind of make what could have happened, which is a light-duty International Harvester with a 6.9 IDI, just because I really like these trucks and I really like these engines. Alrighty, there she is. One of my quickest engine pulls ever, because literally nothing was holding this thing in. Good old Mother Gravity was holding it in. Of course, when I left this thing, we were still getting this cross member all fitted in here, and I just stuck the engine in for the winter, and that's where she sat. So pretty quick engine pull. I'm going to go ahead and check vital signs. The vital sign on this engine is just going to be oil, because obviously I'm not going to have any coolant set up for this thing. If you guys haven't seen the previous videos on this engine or this project, this is a 1986 6.9 engine, except it was put in a 1983. So the engine is a reman. You can see the valve covers punched out for August of 1983, but I ran the VIN number right there. The engine block is a 6.9 from 1986, and you can see the TAM Engine Corp rebuild tag there. So the engine was, at some point or another in its lifetime, the engine was a reman. I don't know that well, it's still a reman, but it's not, not very new anymore, but here she is. So I'm going to get this thing on the ground. Like I said, check vital signs. It does need a new starter. So I've only ever heard this engine run on ether. It ran for like 10 seconds and I couldn't get it to fire on diesel. And I quit messing around because I let the smoke out of the starter, which was an absolute debacle. So I've got a new starter. We're going to put the new starter on this thing, get fuel rigged up to it, figure out something for glow plugs, and we'll see if we can't get her running on the floor here before the New Year's. That'll give me a little motivation to finish up the engine mount, and then I still need to do the transmission mount, and then literally everything else for this project. But little steps. Let's get this thing running first. Well, we got the block heater under there, so I got the starter swapped out on this thing, and I went ahead and got everything rigged up. All we need is starter, fuel shutoff solenoid. We got diesel right there. Got a 4D battery right here, so that should be plenty of cranking power for this thing. I'm just letting it get a little more heat in there. So of course, this engine as it sits doesn't have a block heater, so we just stuck the space heater under there. We got a sleeping bag on this side, good tarp. There's a plank of wood right here so it doesn't melt everything, because if one of these fell into the space heater, it'd be an absolute disaster. But yeah, we'll pump a little heat in this thing and we'll see if it'll light off here in a minute. Alrighty, before I unwrap that burrito there, we'll see how cold it is on the shop floor real quick. It is cold enough that the display screen quit working on this thing. 15.6 degrees right there on the shop floor. And we'll throw it under here. And it is 120 degrees under that tarp, so that engine should be pretty hot. I don't think it warmed up the, very core of the engine too much, but it definitely got some heat in there. So we'll unwrap this thing and see if she won't light off for us. And in my preparations, I went ahead and loosened up all the injector lines already, so we'll have the injectors bleeding hopefully we'll have the injectors bleeding while we're cranking on this thing. Throw the jump pack on. We got our 12 volts to the fuel shutoff solenoid. We can hear that thing clicking, so that's good. All right. We'll get this thing cranking over. I'm going to hit it with some summer air here. And hopefully she starts. Give her a couple spritz for luck. like we're getting some injector action already. That's good. She is not even kicking back on that stuff. That is fun. Try not to waste a whole can of ether on this thing. Alrighty, so obviously things didn't go so hot yesterday, and to give this thing the benefit of the doubt, I went ahead, did the exact same process again today, built the cocoon around this thing, stuck the space heater under there. I mean, this engine got good and hot. It's still warm. It's been uncovered for a few minutes, and we'll hit it with the temp gun, and I'll show you guys. So just right up here on top of the intake is at 102.7 degrees. Over here on the back of the cylinder head, 95.4 degrees, if you guys can see that. There we go. So this thing got good and hot today, like warm, and I tried again to bleed all the injectors again this morning. Obviously I wasn't filming, there's junk in the way, and filming's kind of hard. So anyways, tried it all again, bled all the injectors just to double check everything, you know. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the old mechanical lift pump there, but this thing should have been, you know, popping and binding on that ether yesterday, and we were getting absolutely no action out of that yesterday. Tried it again today, nothing. Obviously, you guys saw I pulled out the glow plug wires, so these two orange wires go to the glow plug harnesses, and so that's what I was hooking up to the jump pack, was these two wires. One goes to each bank, and ran the glow plugs yesterday, nothing. Ran them again today, nothing. So I pulled all the glow plugs, tested all the glow plugs, all 7 of them. This rear passenger side glow plug's broken off in the cylinder head. That's an issue that I've known about. But all 7 of the glow plugs that were in this engine work just fine. So, you know, and spray ether down there, it's not popping or binding or locking or anything. That's a bad sign. That's a very bad sign. I'm starting to think we might have compression issues with this thing, and that's what I had feared when I tried to start it on the shop floor last year. I got no response out of this thing. It'll puff a little smoke. It's probably still got some air, so it's not getting the full blast from the injector, so it's not like pouring smoke out the exhaust, but it should definitely be trying to snort on that ether, and it is not. So I'm going to scrounge up the diesel compression tester. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm going to scrounge up the compression tester kit. We'll try and test a few holes on this thing. We'll see how bad it is. Obviously, I got all the glow plugs out, so we'll test a few holes. I might spray some WD-40 down there, see if that might help it. This engine did sit. That could be the issue. I highly doubt it. Like I said, I heard it fire on ether at one point. Right before I pulled it out of the truck, I heard it run on ether for like 10 seconds, but obviously it wouldn't pick up fuel. So I was thinking maybe it's just the injection pump. The fuel metering valve in these likes to get stuck. They don't move all that great. But obviously if it's not kicking on ether, we've got an issue. So we'll see. Alrighty. So after thawing out the liquid-filled compression tester gauge, because of course that liquid apparently can freeze, I went ahead and tested 4 holes, and here's the results of that. So as you guys might be able to see, we've got good news and bad news. The good news is that the 4 holes I tested are all within range of one another. The bad news is that those 4 holes are well below what a 6.9 IDI should have for compression. These things should have, I believe, anywhere from 350 to 450 psi of compression on the cylinders, and this one's obviously coming in quite a bit lower than that, every cylinder being right around 200. But what I did do is Put a bunch of WD-40 and some PB Blaster in each of the holes, spun the engine over a few times, and then I put some ATF in the holes, spun it over a few more times, and I tested the old number 2 cylinder here because it's the easiest to get at, and that registered well over 400. So what I believe we're looking at here is a piston ring problem, not a cylinder head problem, which is kind of good. You know, best case scenario, we're just looking at stuck piston rings. Worst case scenario, we're looking at broken piston rings or severely damaged cylinder walls. But like I said, I dumped a bunch of ATF down each of the cylinders. I'm going to rotate this thing over by hand a few times to sort of evacuate that fluid that I put in the cylinders, because of course you don't want to hydro lock it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to throw all the glow plugs back in, and I'm going to put the space heater back on this thing, warm it back up. It's starting to cool down a bit. It still has quite a bit of heat to it, but I don't want to, you know, I want to give this thing the best chance that I can of starting. So we'll go ahead and put some more heat on it just to give her the benefit of the doubt. And fingers crossed, maybe this thing will light off for us. Alrighty, 12 volts to the pump here in a second. And we'll add a jumper wire to the terminal behind. So the front terminal is your fuel pump shutoff solenoid. That's literally what kills the engine. And then the terminal right behind it's your cold start advance. Something tells me this engine's going to be needing a bit of a cold start advance, so throw some power at that. And hopefully this thing's got a little bit of compression to it and it'll fire off here. Give her a snort and I guess fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. Not a good start. She's trying. That'll make the eyes sting. God damn. Well, that was all ether. She's not getting any fuel yet. Make sure the fuel line's still in there. Try her again. Dang. We'll let the booster go at it for a second here, and it wants to live. Alrighty, I'm going to give this thing one last try. I feel like I've kind of given it my all. Well, I haven't given it my all. I've given it more like my 3/4, but for me, that's pretty close to giving it my all. And if she won't fire on ether this time, I feel like I'm just going to have to say she's got too low a compression, and going to have to either dismantle this thing, dissect it, and figure out what's going on, or change gears with another IDI. We'll have to see. I had high hopes for this thing, but it is not returning the favor. So we'll just give her one more with the ether. It felt like it was slowing down a bit on the gas. It wasn't firing like it should have been. So if it, like I said, if it won't try this time, we'll just have to call her quits with this thing. Give her a nice spritz to start with. Oh, it's so promising, and it just dashes all your hopes. Alrighty, well, I've absolutely overheated the poor starter doing this nonsense. That's a new starter, so I'm not going to crank on it anymore. it's clearly not going to start and stay running. The fuel system still needs to be gone through. It should definitely, I should definitely, invest in new injectors and a good injection pump and everything, because I have no idea, the condition of any of these. I know that the injection pump shoots fuel out of all the injectors, so it's trying to do something, but obviously that's about all I know, is that it's trying, and sometimes trying just doesn't do it. But of course, the other thing, and probably the worst thing, is the compression issue. This poor old 6.9, it was making 200 pounds of compression. I'm sure if I plugged the gauge back into it, it's probably making 200 pounds of compression again. Obviously, we can synthetically raise the compression by dumping oil in, but it's not going to get us very far. So this is where I kind of want your guys' opinions. So there's this engine. Obviously, it's a good core still. It was rebuilt at some point in time, so everything should still kind of be somewhat-ish fresh. But I also have a 7.3 IDI and a brick nose. That 7.3 ran and drove here, but it's been sitting for a couple years, and it needs probably about the same amount of help as this engine does. I would, personally, I'd kind of rather have the 1986 6.9 IDI, because I kind of like these a little more, but that 7.3, like I said, it drove here. But the 7.3 is currently in a truck. This one is not. I already know all the issues with this engine, more or less, obviously, because I know it makes oil pressure. I know it will sort of try to fire on ether. And I know it has low compression. So I know everything it needs, but it needs time put into it. And like I said, the other engine is in a truck and probably still needs the same amount of work, but the other engine drove here and could probably be made to function kind of cheaply-ish, but I don't know if I want to put the time into the 7.3 or put the time into this engine. You guys know you guys know what's at stake here. You know what's up. So I don't know. What does everybody else think? Throw it down in the old comment box below. But for the time being, I'm going to set this 6.9 to the side. I'm going to keep working on the engine mount for this truck, because this truck's getting an IDI no matter what. The Travelette is going to be IDI powered. If I have to, I don't know, brute force and violence is going to make this work. If it doesn't work on this engine, it'll work on another one. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. That's what I'm going to do, is keep working on the mounts for this truck. Something to keep me busy while the rest of the winter plays out. This project is probably going to be, the engine itself is probably going to be sidelined until summer here, but the truck needs a ton of work. If you guys don't remember much about this thing, it's got body panels are a little hodgepodged on it. She's got some rot in her. Bit of rot in the floorboards in there. That side too. Obviously, I've never vacuumed this thing out or swept it out or anything, so all that still needs to happen. The bed needs a little bit of love too. It's missing some latches, drawers. It's full of junk. There's actually a set. Yeah, there's actually a set of 7.3 IDI cylinder heads here. Fun times. Somebody already got to the glow plugs. Very nice. Yeah. There's bits and pieces and parts. Just about everything floating around. Anyhow, that's what I'm going to do. You guys let me know what you think. Alrighty. Well, clearly, this old 6.9, she kind of disappointed. I'm really curious to see what's going on inside this thing, because obviously I know it was a reman engine at one point in time. So clearly, I've started stripping this thing down. I haven't been filming a lot of the process. There's not a whole lot to show. These old 6.9s are pretty easy to take apart. Pulling the injection pump's pretty straightforward. All the injectors pop right out. Nothing too special there. Nothing too surprising either, other than in the little wells here, it's just completely jam-packed full of dirt and grit that I saw in all the injectors. None of the injectors broke their seal. All the copper washers held their seal, which is really, it's good for them, obviously. So no issues there. And then obviously I've got one valve cover off, and this engine's just beautiful inside, really. But I did notice one issue when I pulled the intake off of this thing. This farthest back number 8 cylinder, if you look down in there, not sure if it's too obvious on camera, but if you guys can see in there, it's full of liquid. The intake runner on number 8 is just full of liquid, which is a really bad sign. Obviously, that means that the number 8 intake valve is not opening or closing. So I've got all the screws out of the valve cover, I think anyhow. Yeah, so got the old rubber mallet out here. And we'll see what the carnage looks like under here. There we go. Get off of there. Oh, caught on the dipstick. Interesting. Looks fine. What in the world? Huh. I mean, that's loose, but not... Yeah, nothing that would cause any concern, really. We might have to dive in a little further to figure that one out. Again, this engine's just beautiful under the valve covers. Obviously, like I said, this was a reman engine at some point, so I'm hoping everything inside it looks great. If I get the cylinder heads off and the cylinders look like they'll take a hone and piston rings and we'll have compression again, that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Unfortunately, the nature of this engine, it was out at a gold claim. This thing was beat to hell. I know that it probably sucked quite a bit of dirt and dust in. If that's the case and the cylinder walls are scored up, I'll mothball this thing. We'll get it ready for storage and pack it away. I do have a 7.3 IDI that I can use for this project if the need arises, but I'm pretty hopeful right now, other than obviously this number 8 intake not opening. That's one mystery. So far, it's the only issue I've really found, so I'll keep you guys updated. Alrighty, we got the first of 2 cylinder heads off. All this rust streaking you see in here came out of the bolt holes. Every single head bolt in this engine had rust on it like that. So, of course, you can see all that just dumped right down in the cylinders. So I'm going to have to clean that out and get this thing spinning around. But upon first inspection, it looks really good in here. And it does appear that these are 20 thousandths over pistons. They'll have a 20 stamped on them, and that's the only marking that I see, and they look beautiful. There's hardly any ring ridge in this thing. But it just ran right out of compression, so I wonder what's up with that. The underside of the cylinder head looks great too. I don't see any cracking in the pre-cups on this thing, which is great, or any cracking coming out from the valves, which is fascinating. Any IDI guy out there could definitely tell you that these things are known to crack in here, and basically as long as the cracks don't extend beyond this fire ring, you're good to go. And yeah, it looks like when they reman this engine, they put new cups in it. So all in all, it looks amazing in here, but there is hardly any crosshatch left in there. So I'm going to clean all this rust out of here so I don't scrape it along the cylinder walls, and then I'll spin this thing over and give this side a good look, and then we'll pop that cylinder head off and see what's going on in there. But given that I tested 2 cylinders on each side, and all 4 that I tested were at around 200 PSI, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, she just kind of ran out of compression. So I guess new piston rings, and this thing might be a good runner. Alrighty, cylinder head number 2, and exact same story. Rust from the head bolts fell in the cylinders, but the cylinders themselves, they all look great. Minimal ring ridge in there. The only issue with them all is there is little to no hone left in the cylinders. The cylinders are pretty well glazed over, and so yeah, honestly, I think our issue, what we're looking at, is good old-fashioned piston rings that quit sealing. That's about the size of it there. So piston rings, and provided the bottom end looks good on this thing, I think all we really need is piston rings. Given the shape of everything else that I've looked at, I think the bottom end's going to be in good shape, because when they remanned it, seems as how they put new pre-cups in here. These guys are the pre-cups in these things. Seems as how when they remanned this engine, they put new pre-cups in it. They almost definitely put new bearings in the bottom end. I think all we're looking at is a quick hone job and bearings in this engine, and I think we're in business. Like, I'm honestly impressed at how nice it looks inside, given what I've seen from the outside And given what I saw, I mean, the truck was an absolute mess that this engine came out of. I think we're going to get away pretty easy on this thing. Like, everything just looks so great on it. So, and that valve, the number 8 that I said, you know, that intake valve was full of water, or not water, but it was fuel from when I was trying to start this thing. What happened was all of the ether and everything when I tried to start this engine sat in the intake. And when I picked this engine up to put it on this wheelie cart here, when I picked up the engine tilted back and it just pushed all that liquid right into the number 8. And so all that liquid was just sitting on top of that valve, which is great news for the number 8 intake valve. That means that the intake valve seals really well because it didn't let the liquid into the cylinder, it held it. So, you know, good news for that intake valve. Yeah, I think we're going to get away with piston rings, which is just absolutely baffling. I can't believe it, but yeah, there is just absolutely no hone left in these cylinders. Obviously, the ideal thing to do here would be to take this thing to a machine shop and have them hone it and take care of the... there is a minor ring ridge, but it is nothing bad at all. So obviously, the proper thing to do would be to take it to a machine shop. But I don't take things to machine shops because I'm a poor. So try and get this head gasket off. They did use a pretty nice head gasket on this thing when they rebuilt it. I was kind of curious to see if we could tell if any of these cylinders had been sleeved, and I'm seeing no real indication of it. Well, there's kind of a faint line there. I can't tell if it's just the head gasket imprinting on the block or not. I don't think this thing's been sleeved, but like, I'm going to do anything about it either way. Just kind of curious. Get off of there. There we go. Good thing I left the oil pressure sensor in there. Nice head gasket holder. Nothing obvious saying that it's been sleeved, but, you know, who's really to tell? Anyways, well, sounds like I'll search around and try and find a set of piston rings for this thing. Obviously, it needs to get cleaned up a lot. It's an absolute mess. There's all kinds of junk in the cylinders now that needs to get cleaned out. And I need to figure out how to get this thing upside down to get the oil pan off so we can get pistons out when we do get piston rings. So that's going to be fun. I definitely don't have an engine stand that can hold this pig, so fun stuff. Well, there you have it. The little 6.9 that couldn't. It needs piston rings and some other help. This thing... hopefully she'll come back around. Well, it needs piston rings and a whole fuel system, basically. But, yeah, there she is. You guys can look forward to seeing more updates on this thing, hopefully right here on the channel. I'm not going to let go of this thing easily. It's just too nice inside to give up on, despite its issues. So, yeah, I'll keep working on it. But thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.